the normal time. No, I think this was, so the microphone should have been on only if the rain was falling. No, but you can take it down. So let me give the others a chance to settle. On Friday, I'll be in Region 1. So I've just had to shift the press conference to today. Now, a number of people have been contacting us saying that they scheduled this for Thursday. So I'm disrupting their schedule. So I want to apologize to them. I have no choice because I will be out of town. And I've asked Jason Abdullah to ensure that tomorrow it's also at 2 p.m. it's played on my page. So then those who didn't have the chance to watch the press conference today, they can watch it tomorrow. For all of those who've been contacting us, I've already seen them contacting us, and my WhatsApp too. It's getting overloaded with messages. I'm disrupting their schedule. I guess I did that for the state media too. I didn't want to miss another week because normally we don't say much during the week. But you have so much nonsense that passes off as news. And the opposition has been prolific now. We get closer to elections, so they will send out a press release every day on any issue under the sun. Whether it makes sense or not, it doesn't matter. And then, of course, they get it published in particularly the Kaichou News, because that is an opposition newspaper. So I just wanted this week, I've noticed we have gone to a new low. We have an editorial on pit latrines in the country from a serious newspaper called the Starbuck News. But if we need topics for an editorial, here is one that should create a sense of outrage everywhere. And you should have hundreds of editorials on this topic. So you know, earlier this week, the mayor and city council forced through a proposal by the mayor to reduce their rates and taxes for political parties by a significant sum. So they will only pay 25% of what they should pay. The People's Progressive Party civic councils, or 11 councils, opposed this amendment. This was not solicited by any political party, or at least the People's Progressive Party, because we're the largest political party in this country. We never asked for this. So we were shocked that they will just bring this proposal and then rush it through the city council. So there had to be an ulterior motive here. And that is what our councillors were trying to get at. Now, I didn't see much reported about this, but we had time to report on, write editorials on pit latrines in the country. So we dug a bit deeper, and it seems as though there is a specific reason for this proposal. Congress Place owes $6.7 billion. $6.7 billion. So you would want to, and a demand was notice was sent to them for this sum of money, $6.7 billion. So how do you get your rates and taxes up to $6.7 billion? Clearly, they have not been paying for a very, very long time. And therefore, the interest has accrued and has been capitalized now. And therefore, they now have to pay this huge sum of money. And that's just on one property. That's Sapphire property. They have outstanding sums for 3 other properties, $1.2 million, $988,000, and $3.5 million. So clearly, this proposal is to deprive the citizens of Georgetown and the mayor and town council of taxes that are due to them and from the People's National Congress. Now, if you want an editorial, you should do this as an editorial, because this is a political party that is influencing the taxation policy in an entity that it controls to benefit itself. Just imagine if the PPP was in control of the city council or any other council and did that for itself. You would have had not just editorials, all week long, you would have had tons and tons of articles expressing outrage over this. And it goes by quietly. It goes by quietly. So I hope that this is picked up by all these elements in civil society that talk about good governance and everything else, and that they give full expression to it. But this is typical PNC behavior. Lawless, doesn't believe that it has any obligation. In fact, it took the Sapphire land from the state. It took a lot of other state lands and converted them into party lands without paying a cent. As recent as last year, it took a prime property at Agricola that is owned by the city council, and they leased it for like $20,000 a year, Guyana dollars per year, to the PNC. This is typical PNC behavior. And now when it has to meet its obligation, it tries to deprive the people of Georgetown. The leader of the opposition, Mr. Norton, had a press conference on August 23rd. And it was filled once again with what they are known for, which is racism and lack of any clear vision or plan on any sector of the economy. So if you just listen to what the leader of the opposition said. He said that on the east coast of Demerara, we're building a highway on the railway embankment, a 4-lane highway that you all know of, from Mahaica to Georgetown, to ease the congestion on the east coast for all of our people who live on the east coast. When completed, that will make a huge difference in the lives of people who are living on the East Coast. This is consistent with our plan to also build highways for other densely populated areas, 4-lane highways. We have completed the one from Georgetown to Diamond, and the bulk of the population lives in that bit of the East Bank corridor. So that has made a significant change in the lives of the people, the commuters who live all the way to Diamond. We're now extending that beyond Diamond, first to Busby Dam and then to the highway. So that was completed. Tomorrow, the president will open the 4-lane highway from Crane to the bridge, bypassing the congestion at Vreden Hoop. That was we saw the need for it. It's a populous region. A lot of people from the Region 3 use that road. In the morning, people could wait several hours in that line to cross the bridge. It's a choke point, and we decided to move on it swiftly, and it has been completed by this government in a relatively short period of time. And tomorrow it will be open, and it will change the lives of the people who live in Region 3, who have to use that area, particularly those who live on the coastal area, not so much on the bank. So this is nothing new. We're also in Berbice. We've started because that's the next most populous region. So it's 4, 3, 4, and 6. These are the most populated regions. We have now we have awarded 4-lane road starting from New Amsterdam, and ultimately that would be built. The construction should start soon. I think today or so, another contract will be signed to pave the Linden Highway from Soesdijk all the way into Linden, and the part from the airport, the widening of the road by 8 feet all the way back to the stadium, the old road, and repaving it. That contract has been awarded. So it's a network of roads that we're building to ensure that people have, they can have a better commuting experience. Now we know that Norton and his party and the AFC have said we should not build infrastructure. Any oil resource we have, we should just share it out. Don't forget that it's too much emphasis on infrastructure. So they're opposed to all of these things. But the worst thing that they can do, and it's a new law even for the PNC, because it will be exposed when the road is completed. Norton said at the press conference just a week ago that on the Indo-Guyanese majority villages on the East Coast, we're now moving people off, we're moving them off only 20 feet from the road. And in the Afro-Guyanese villages, or predominantly Afro-Guyanese villages on the East Coast, we're moving them 40 feet off the median of the road. So, how do we build a 4-lane highway? We have to build a 4-lane highway along the East Coast corridor. You need 67 feet throughout from Mahaika all the way to Georgetown to build a 4-lane road. If we're only moving those who are on the side of the road in the Indo-Guyanese villages by 20 feet, we can't build a 4-lane road in those villages. But it's so obvious. How could you be so stupid to even say something like this when we have to find a corridor of 67 feet from Mahaika all the way to Sheriff Street to put the 4-lane road? We're not going to build 3 lanes here and 2 lanes in the Indian village or the Indo-Guyanese villages, and then 4-lane in Afro-Guyanese villages. It's utter nonsense. The reason we didn't continue with the 4-lane road on the main highway was we had this space all the way to Annandale when we conceived that project. But going through Buxton, we could not. We would have had to acquire a lot of properties there. So if you see the 4-lane highway stop there, and then we started we now move onto the railway embankment because that's where we believe that we had a bigger, where we can find this space to go all the way through. But if you look at the part through Buxton, we would have had to acquire all those properties on both sides. That was in the government, and they implemented that. We left that project, and they just implemented the project. They didn't even conceive the project, they just implemented it. The Chinese company did that. So this is a racist comment coming out from a leader of the opposition who should be working to bring our people together, but in such a petty manner, with such a, in something that could easily be proven. You talk to the engineer, Ms. Nigel, who is the government engineer there, and he'll tell you exactly what the profile of the road is, that we need 6 to 7 feet. But here, the leader of the opposition spoke about PPP discrimination in building this road. And I'll come back to this a little bit later when I'm dealing with the Berbice Bridge. That's one of the issues. So racist, again, totally racist. Secondly, Mr. Norton repeated the old Gulsaran lie that they had put in their manifesto at the press conference again. About 50 billion he could raise $50 billion from reducing waste on projects and corruption. Remember, that was in the 2015 manifesto of the People's National Congress, the same manifesto where they promised the double old age pension in 100 days, the good life for everyone. They promised to help the miners, they promised to create jobs, to help young people, to do everything under the sun. Well, they said they would find 50 billion through reducing corruption and waste under the PPP. He repeats it again. But he is a fossil from the past, so I guess these things are fresh in his memory. And then he goes back to the issue about the teachers. Shamelessly not talking about it when last week I pointed out that the maximum percentage increase that they gave in the 5 years that they were in office was 10%. And the 10 was 2016. And accepting for themselves, the ministers, which was 50%. The public servants got the maximum 10% in 2016. Every year it was below that. And the 2016 10% was only for people who earn more than 99,000 Guyana dollars. So if you're a teacher and you're earning more than 99,000 at that time, you got a 7% increase, not a 10%. But assuming, for argument's sake, that everyone got 10%, which they did not get, it would have cost $1.5 billion to pay the 10% to the teachers at that time. Because the wage bill for teachers was $15 billion in 2015. So 10% of it, $1.5 billion. The wage bill is $40 billion now. 10% of it is $4 billion more per year. And he says it's insulting. He ignores that entire fact and doubles down on the thing, oh, it's insulting. The PPP gave an insulting offer to the public, the teachers again. So he dealt with that. They then say, Adam Harris asked him if the PPP plans to make Guyana a nation of idiots. And he said, yes, this is our plan. Our great plan here in Guyana, as defined by Norton, is to make Guyana a nation of idiots. This is from the leader of a political party who wants to be the president of this country. And then he speaks about we're not training enough people. Can you imagine this coming from Norton and the others who joined him at the press conference. I've gone through the number of scholarships. APNU increased UG fees by 35% in the 5 years. We are now writing off all the loans from the past for UG students. Next year, we'd make UG free. So that's the first thing. We had less than 1,000 scholarships. Simona Brooms, her children got scholarships worth tens of millions of dollars. The ministers got their scholarships. How many ordinary persons got a scholarship? Now we have 28,000 people studying, paid for fully by the government of Guyana under the Gold program alone, and another 28,000 studying through Gold and 22,000 through BIT, Win and Grow. And he will say, we are trying to make Guyana a country of idiots and we're not training enough people. You have to be really delusional on that matter. On the LCDS, he gave a long, convoluted position on it, claiming that the PPP is very transactional. We only look at making money. Well, we look at making money for the country, yes. That's how we run the business of government. You have to run the business of government like that. You can't run a government by slogans. You have to run it in a business-like fashion. So that is a compliment coming from Norton. But I'm convinced that he didn't read either Granger's sloganeering, Green State strategy, nor did he read the LCDS, because his rambling answer would bear testimony to this. So he says that on the LCDS, we must pay more attention to biodiversity. So a key element of the expanded LCDS is focusing on biodiversity. But not just biodiversity, we have expanded it to adaptation, we have expanded it to the blue economy, we have expanded it to integrated water management. Clearly he didn't read, he thought it's only about forests, it's still about forests. He did not read the expanded LCDS that we launched. He doesn't understand the carbon transactions that took place. He clearly didn't see, first of all, the Green State strategy for what it was. It was a document that they paid $2 million from the LCDS money that we had earned through Norway to develop. They pay consultants, and they got the UN agencies, UNEP, and it's the GGGI, to assist with producing this document. Our LCDS was indigenously created. That means indigenous to Guyana, to all of us. We worked on it ourselves. We produced it. We didn't get the UN to do it or the Green Growth Institute, the Global Green Growth Institute to do it. So clearly, when you're confronted with a question that demands a sensible answer, he moved back to slogans. Oh, Desmond Hoyt gave some land to the Commonwealth in 1989. As I said, he's a fossil, he remembers that. Everything that transpired thereafter, he lost sight of. And the content of it, because he's unfamiliar with the content. And then Elson Lowe chipped in with, oh, we're focusing on people-centered development now. Another slogan. It's people, when they can't deal with substance, they sloganeer. People-centered development doesn't mean anything if you don't fix people's roads, you don't give them good health care, you don't give them proper education or the opportunity to study, you don't find jobs for them, You don't have the children taken care of. You don't invest in security so they can live in their home peacefully. What does people-centered development mean? You're opposed to everything we do in education, healthcare, expanding education, healthcare infrastructure, everything else, but you're for people-centered development. It's, as I said before, when I was speaking about Nigel Hughes and the National Development Strategy and creation of a plan. When you don't have anything, this is the refuge for the ignorant. They just go back to slogans. It means nothing. And that was what the Green State Strategy was. A set of an agglomeration of wishful thinking, declarative statements that mean nothing without policies and programs to implement. The LCDS has a mean, it outlines our objective. It sets out a pathway to earning resources, which we have used through monetizing this valuable asset that we have. It has established a global standard because we're the only country to have in the world to have a jurisdictional scale certification of its forests now by an external body. In Africa, they're moving toward, I think it's Liberia now moving forward to this too, but no other country. And we have now decided how we utilize the funds to change people's lives and to adapt to climate change. So of the 750 million US we're earning through this strategy, which would be zero on the APNU because we're too transactional, 600 odd million will go to adaptation that would help our people right across Guyana to better prepare for droughts, floods, etc. It would help our farmers, people who live in communities. So, like what happened with the Hope Canal that we built, that not only saved the farmlands in Region 5 and Region 4, but also all of us who live in Region 4 because it reduced the threat to Region 4 that should that conservancy dam break, which is an earthen conservancy dam, we would have flooded all of us out in Georgetown, on the East Coast, everywhere. Had we not had that outlet to take the water directly into the Atlantic so that when the pressure builds up in the conservancy, we can do that. They're opposed to that. And that is what a strategy is. It's not just a declarative statement, people-centered strategy, Green State. You have to actualize it. You have to think it through. You have to see that it's self-financing, that it doesn't burden the country, which is what we have done. And it's through our innovative thinking and through our creativity that we have done this. We are earning money for our country, and it's going then to implement projects that will safeguard this country when other countries are still waiting for adaptation money to come from through the UNFCCC process, and they're not getting any money. We have identified a source for doing that. Apart from that, some of it has gone to the Amerindian people, transforming their lives. So of the 700 odd million, they'll get 120 something million US dollars, which they wouldn't have gotten under APNU. So he then goes on to say, oh, you got to look at solid waste to management. Now, I think he's confusing a couple of things. So, solid waste management is important. That is why we moved. When I was president, we started a project to move the dump site out of the city and put it to the back of Eccles. It was in the city on the APNU. And we moved it out of the city, and then we moved it to Eccles. And we have invested a ton of money to deal with this. But clearly, this doesn't suit him. So this is what we have to deal with in the country. So I want to address the issue of the bridge, the Berbice Bridge. So I saw the AFC's position, and this is an article that they have. I think this is their statement. And it was repeated everywhere. So it says it lacks a questionable feasibility. One of the titles, a questionable feasibility, right? So that they don't, we did a questionable feasibility, or there needs to be a feasibility study now. So this is the feasibility study that AFC did, Patterson did in the last government for the Demerara Harbor Bridge Corporation. That is for the new bridge across the Demerara River. This study, this is the total study. You can see it here. They spent, if you look at the Public Procurement Commission report, so this study was done by a company that made an unsolicited bid or made a proposal to the minister. They canceled the bid process. This company walked into the ministry and handed to the minister and his staff a proposal. He then took this proposal to the cabinet, bypassed the tendering system and the MPTAB. Now that is illegal. Cabinet cannot approve a contract in the law. The Procurement Act that was passed when I was president, we removed the cabinet from the approval of contracts. It's illegal for the cabinet to approve contracts. When I was president, we passed that into law. Cabinet can only give in no objection. So the procuring entity is the MPTAB. Then goes to the cabinet. If cabinet withholds a no objection, it must say why it's withholding. So there has to be reason. Cabinet has no right of approval of contract. So he took this to cabinet, no bypassing MPTAB, went to the cabinet approved it illegally, utilizing funds from the Harbor Bridge Company for $161 million. So we paid $161 million for this. There's a couple pictures that they put in, which concluded that we should do a 3-lane bridge. They put in a lot of pictures here. And a 3-lane bridge that was coming into Georgetown that would have been open like this. So not a much improvement from the Harbor Bridge. There exists in one which has to be open. And would have had a bend that goes on a particular person's land. So we paid $161 million for this. So in 2004, when I was president, this was the feasibility study that we did for the Berbice Bridge. This is it. This was the feasibility study that we did. Look at it. This is what he did. We paid $1.1 million US for this. This is $160-something million, just under $1 million. That's the difference in this. Is the feasibility study. So I had to print it out. This is it. You can examine it. for the whole Berbice, the bridge. This was done before we started working on the project. They claimed falsely at that time that the location was to be racist also, that I was doing it there to bypass New Amsterdam. That was the claim. Nigel Hughes attempted to prove this in the court. Now, we studied several locations, 5 locations. And had we gone to, at one stage, we were thinking about Everton, to go build a road along all the way past Ithaca to go up to Everton and then come around back. But that would have added 30 minutes to the journey time. So if you're going to say just Palmyra or Albion or anywhere else, you would have had to go up there, drive another 20, 30 minutes, then cross, and then come down back. In a feasibility study, that means a lot, because the wear and tear on vehicle, you cost it. You also had to cost the time. So if people would get half an hour added to the time, and you had, every year you would have had millions of man hours lost, and therefore their costs would have been higher, and therefore made the location less feasible. So you would have to spend more on gas, wear and tear on vehicle, and man hours lost. That's how you calculate feasibility study. And that's how we came, of the 5 locations we studied, we came up with this site, which would have still serviced New Amsterdam, but come in there. So at that time, Patterson said we needed a concrete structure. Why are we going with a floating structure? So we did not have much money at that time. We were still trying to deal with the APNU debt. And we put together the first public-private partnership that has been a model, because the people of Berbice got the bridge and we didn't have to spend taxpayers' money on it. They got the bridge, and the rate that they charge on the toll is the same rate that they were paying. It's a little high, but it was the same rate they were paying to cross, if you cross the ferry rate. But it saved thousands, tens of thousands of man hours and all the grief that people had to wait for the ferry. It was because of our thinking. The PP has always looked for solutions, even when we did not have money at that time. We found a solution that delivered a bridge to the people in Berbice, and I think this year it's probably 18 years already, 17 or 18 years the bridge has been in existence. And people, it has changed the lives of people. But the bridge has a 20-year, well, the contract is for 20 years. I think it expires by 2027. It was always our intention to do a concrete structure to replace the floating structure. And then what sort of feasibility study do you really need when you have to connect 2 points across a river? We have to do it in any case if we want to develop Berbice, and we intend to develop Berbice too, like we're developing Region 4 and like we're developing every other Region 3 with a 4-lane bridge there, like we're doing in Linden now, building a 4-lane bridge across the river there in Linden. But they're anti-Berbice and anti-development. Also anti-Berbice and anti-development, and lies prolifically. We need a feasibility study. Look at the feasibility study. This is Patterson's feasibility study for which he is being charged. I think he's before the court now. Full of pictures, not data. We had data for everything, pictures, everything. Look, somebody, I could put this together in a day. I could, on my own, put this together in a day. Google Maps and stuff like this. I could put this together a day and I could earn probably $161 million for this. This is his study. You know, people, this is for the lazy, uninformed, anecdotal. AFC and PNC get away with a lot of this because people tend not to remember the past. People tend to just everything you say, oh, feasibility study, the lazy people in our society, all of them believe you have to. Just saying a word like feasibility study somehow makes you erudite. You're smart because here AFC is calling for a feasibility study. You could have done without a feasibility study here. Feasibility studies are not like any major thing. For example, you had some pre-feasibility study for the gas to energy project. Was it technically feasible? Can you build pipelines and power plants? Yes, the answer is yes. People build that around the world. It's technically feasible because it's being done everywhere in the world. You can find a solution for that. So it's just about numbers. Can the project pay back for itself? We've demonstrated that this project, from the sale of the liquids alone, can repay the whole $2 billion of debt. The pipeline, the power plant, and the NGL facility. That the price of electricity will generate at less than 4 cents per kilowatt hour when we're generating at 20-something cents now. On your own, any sensible person, you don't even need to do a feasibility study. But for Christ's sake, we didn't have it, or something like that. So I'm not making it people who don't plan to do anything. The people who don't do anything in their lives just like to misdirect. So we've had this history. The PNC was opposed to the Berbice Bridge. They were opposed an AFC, the stadium. They were opposed to the CARICOM new building. They were opposed to the convention center. They were opposed to the Hope Canal. They were opposed to the Marriott. They were opposed to the Chedijagan International Airport, which was a new airport we left, and then they messed it up, Patterson, and made it a rehabilitation project. They were opposed to Amila. Now they're opposed to the gas to energy. They're opposed to the highways we're building. They're opposed to the hospital. Everything they're opposed to. You ask them what they have conceptualized to solve our problems. Nothing. What are they for? Which project? Everything they're opposed to. And not sensible for any to approach it with facts and figures. Oh, we don't like this on here, this project. You need a feasibility study for the Berbice Bridge. This is the feasibility study we had. But this is something we have to constantly look at. These two parties, they got away for years with slogan. I remember growing up as a boy, we had a slogan like "Freed, clothe, and house the nation." It used to be that slogan everywhere: feed, clothe, and house the nation. You remember that? You're too young to remember that, but you should read up about that. Then we started starving because we didn't have food. They stopped building houses. We got a big housing deficit. And people started bringing in little suitcases, smuggling them through the airport. And the guys used to smuggle, you know, at that time people used to wear gabardine. I'm from that era. So they used to wear some pants made from gabardine, and they used to smuggle the cloth to villages on the East Coast. So sometimes the people who helped them move the bolts of cloth off the boat, the little boats that they smuggled the cloth in from Suriname, they would give them as payment one bolt of the cloth. And then eventually all the boys in the village would be wearing the same color gabardine pants, short pants or long pants in that period. So we started having no food. We're living with our parents, no housing, and then even the clothing was a problem in that period. Slogans all the time. This is typical Green State strategy. And the Green State strategy was the president flying into Mabaruma to plant 2 trees, as though we didn't have enough trees there. Bartica, we plant some trees in Bartica. Not to earn money, to change people's lives, to create jobs, to deal with adaptation, nothing of this sort. And not a set of slogan. And then painting every public building in green. You know that period too. The buses started turning green, everything, the buses. That's how they survive, sloganeering. Nigel used, let's come up with a plan. This is our plan. Again, that's what I'm showing you. Everything that we've done, it has a theoretical foundation for it. This is our plan. He doesn't have anything. He wants us to get together to produce a plan now. But for Christ's sake, you've been in a political party for 15 years. You've been the chairman of the party twice for 10 years, over 10 years ago, and you can't tell us what your plans are until now. What you want, but you can. You went to the elections in 2015 claiming you had all these plans and you were going to change Guyana. Or they would unveil their plan as we get closer to election, etc., as though these are state secret. So again, this feasibility study, they just don't want the Berbice Bridge to be built. They don't want the Berbice Bridge to be built. They don't want anything to happen anywhere, but he wants pit latrines to be fixed. That is the biggest concern. That's their policy now, fixing pit latrines across Guyana. And he got an editorial from the Starbuck News for the pit latrines. But they can't find an editorial to talk about the $5 billion that the Tushau's left Georgetown with, coming from an innovative strategy created by the PPP government. But they're concerned about pit latrines in Amerindian villages now. They can't do an editorial on that. They were doing an editorial on pit latrines that Nigel Hughes discovered when he went into the interior. Never mind, people don't have, some of the communities, we're struggling now to put water in them, so we flush their toilets with, I don't know what, you would have to go down to the creek to bring the water sometimes to flush the flush toilets and stuff like that. And when the children go back home now, I don't see the homes with the flush toilets back in those villages. People, they're so divorced from reality and the concerns of people in those areas. So not a single word about that. Not a single word about the positive things that came out of the NTC. You would believe that the NTC is a disaster. The AFC has gone down underground and spread news word that we forced the Tushau's to collect the money. Not a set of lies, but this is pit latrines making it to the editorial now, the PPP. And guess what? They said, oh, the PPP collected a lot of oil money, the same thing like APNO. Last week, I pointed out, I saw Oil Now saying, getting into the same thing, doing Exxon's propaganda. And they put, oh, we are collecting 7.6 million US per day. Did they put how much Exxon is getting per day? But the $7.6 million we're collecting per day works out, for if we take it to this year, works out to 29,000 Guyana dollars per month for the citizens of this country. That is, if you take all of the oil money. And that's what I've been saying on the road. Let's don't build no schools. Let's don't build no road. Let's don't build any hospital. Let's don't do anything else. Invest in anything else. So we must walk in canals. We must use bush medicine. We must go back to flambeau to when we want to read or so. We power houses with flambeau and all of this stuff. Nothing. Let's go back to those days and give every Guyanese all the oil money, and we will give them the 29,000 Guyana dollars per month that all the oil money translates into. That would make us rich, 150 US dollars per month, every one of us, and we don't need roads or schools or training, or forget scholarships and stuff like that. That is what, so we got this oil money, but we can't fix the pit latrines. We're trying to transform the country. And that is why people get upset. They get upset with us when we talk about historical context. Because people ask, oh, the PPP was there before, so why didn't you fix? You still have poverty in many areas. And when we try to explain, oh, they said, why would you want to go back to the past? Well, the problem is that when you're dealt with a hand that we were dealt with in 1992, where 100% of your revenue went to service debt, you had to start from that base to rebuild the country. And the first decade and a half was lost to fixing the country and the economic fundamentals. The progress of the PPP is not in just the transformation of infrastructure which you have seen. It's not just the physical things that you can touch. It is also restoring an insolvent country to financial viability. And that is what was the constraining factor. But they don't like us to talk about that. Because if you look at, on every metric, the developed world and many of our peers have gone from maybe the debt to GDP ratio of about 45% to 50% to over 100% now. That is their debt to economy, debt to GDP ratio. We were 900% when we started. Before oil, we took it down to about 35% before oil, and now it's 22% of GDP. We've come in the other direction, the debt to GDP ratio. The rest of the world has gone in a different direction. But it took hard work even before oil to do that. But you know what we lost? The billions that we had to pay back in debt were money that we lost that we couldn't spend on development for our people. So we had to move the country forward and still pay back the debt. Nobody talks about return of Guyana to solvency. And from the days of the McIntyre report, when there is this, we are below Haiti, bringing Guyana back to a middle-income country and soon to be an upper middle-income country already. That is, they always say, why do you have to go back to the past? That's to understand the historical context. Why do we still have people who may have pit latrines, etc.? Because we're struggling in the indigenous communities when they didn't have a health hut, or didn't have a school, a primary school, or didn't have a road, or anything else. That was the priority, or job creation, or the kids couldn't get scholarships. We didn't start by fixing the pit latrines first. We started by doing that. And every single day, when you go to these communities, you've seen the changes in these areas. And you listen to the people who live there, or how their lives have changed. So this is the perspective. They go to the minutiae and to the ridiculous. Pit latrines, not about a vision, a strategy to create jobs, to raise health care to a certain standard, education to a certain standard. They're still about pit latrines. And the whole editorial about, listen, another editorial, PPP and APA. So they said, oh, we're demonizing the opposition in relation to Amerindians. We don't have to demonize the opposition. They did that themselves. They're the ones who stopped the land titling activity. Starbuck News never mentioned that they stopped land titling. Starbuck News never mentioned that they fired the CSO. None of that. That they put a VAT on hinterland travel. In the editorial, we are demonizing the opposition in relation to Amerindians. Amerindian development was not a priority, and it got reflected in the numbers. We must not speak of our achievements. We mustn't say that a single school we're building now in Quebana, and there are several schools, billions of dollars, but one school is more than the entire capital budget for all the four regions that Amerindian live in, predominantly Amerindian live in. So we mustn't say that, or we are demonizing the opposition by comparisons to talk about our track record versus theirs. And secondly, the APA has to be for development of Amerindian people because it's an Amerindian organization. That's the conclusion of the editorial. But that's not automatic. It could be to raise funds using Amerindian development for a particular cause. And where the cause is raising money. But did they ever check how much of the money raised by the APA gets spent in the Amerindian communities, and for what? They didn't check that. And if they're so pro-development, why would they try to block the $9.5 billion that the communities have already received, and every year they will receive more until they get 122 million US. APA is trying to block 122 million US dollars going to the Amerindian villages. And that works out, just these 2 years would work out to over 800 projects. But surely they must be for development because they're named Amerindian People's Organization. You can be named anything, but you have to examine the nature, the true nature of these organizations based on what they do, not what they say. And they didn't mention a word about that. I said, fact check all of this. In my speech at the convention center, I said, why don't you fact check the following things? They didn't fact check those. They didn't fact check a single one of those, but come back with the sloganeering issue again. So this week, I wanted just to talk about a couple of basic stuff. It's just, if you compare the parties, we have a scientific approach to these matters. Sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. So we started off early years in the 90s with this document that we generated, which subsequently got changed into and culminated in this one. But it evolved from here to this document. This is a summary document. The LCDS had transitions. We outline our approach to development. In these documents, you will see how we are approaching almost every sector of the economy. When we were doing the bridge, we went through the diligence. Even when we didn't have money, we did due diligence here. Almost on everything we do due diligence. We have a clear plan. The others are opposed to many things. APNU, AFC, they opposed to everything. In government too, they were opposed to things. They never had, I can't imagine what they would stand for. They don't stand for building the hydro because they kill that. But they don't want the gas to energy power plant too. And they don't want fossil fuel. So how are we going to generate power and fix the power plant? But they want cheaper power. We will give you cheaper power, but we're opposed to any project that actually will deliver the cheaper power. This is the kind of thinking that goes through the opposition. They're not ready to even operate at a junior level, much less run government. They're just unprepared, historically and even now. And so that's the major difference. And I hope that we'd see more editorials on the APNU's attempt to steal the money at the city council. Again, the tax is a huge one. I hope the mayor gets asked and Norton gets asked about his arrears to the city council and how he plans to clear the arrears. Thank you. By the way, I see Granger coming out. Every week he coming out with some effect. The holiday effect 1 week for the elections. He wants to rewrite. We try to rig the elections now. They come out one after the other. Then the Charandas effect. Every week, he's not talking about the effect of his, what I always forget about it. Is what it, good times. They plan to give Guyanese a great time or a good time. That was their slogan, the good time slogan, good time for everyone or something like that. Should talk a bit about that. Good time. Yeah, please go on.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and Ask William Sky Chair News. Donald Trump has recently been speaking about the American dream, and as someone who's been intimately involved he's talking about this American dream, and I'm asking you, as someone who has been intimately involved in Guyana's politics and development for more than 30 years, what is your conceptualization of the Guyana's dream, and do you envisage it being realized anytime soon?
So the thing is that, as I said before, it's easy to come up with a set of slogans for anyone. So, but it's hard to define a vision and then work in the good and bad times, in times of scarce resources and times of plentiful resources, to have the discipline to stay the course over the long period to achieve the vision. It is also harder to come up with policies and programs that are consistent with that vision. And I think we have done that work in Guyana, in the PPP. We have clearly outlined that we see a country, first of all, that is united and prosperous. United and prosperous. That all of our people, regardless of their race, religion, gender, that they can benefit from high quality services offered by the state, and that they can benefit from growing opportunities provided by the state. The state can determine often the outcome of how you use the opportunities, but the state has a duty, we believe, to provide these opportunities. And so that is what we've been working towards. First of all, the economic vision. So the economic vision is to ensure that we manage the resources of this country in such a manner that in the long run, they would lead to sustained growth and progress for our people, and higher incomes for our people, whether they're in the public sector or the private sector. So that's the purpose of the economic vision. And to achieve its sustainability, you have to invest in long-term programs and projects. You can't use every cent that you collect now to use it today. You have to build bridges, you have to build roads, you have to build power plants, you have to get good quality internet, you have to get good recreational facilities. All of these work out to that vision. On rights, so economic prosperity has to be buttressed by the programs to support that. I believe we have outlined what those programs are. In terms of social benefit and assistance to people, we believe that we can transfer wealth in a manner that creates a better quality of life for our people and prepare them for a better future through more education. That is why we're investing tens of billions of dollars in education now. Our budget has grown from $53 billion when we got into office to $135 billion this year. That means a 160% increase in our education budget. We're transferring resources by paying for more people to train, writing off their debt at the university, free education. That prepares our people if they utilize those opportunities, but that means an effort on their part too. If they utilize it, they can do better in life. We said there are 3 groups of people that we want to make sure that they get higher levels of transfers. Those requiring social public assistance, the people living with disability, our children, and the elderly. That is why we decided in the 5 years to double old age pension, which will cost $20 billion more per year. So on the social side, the economic side, it's creating more opportunities, investing in long-term sustainable activities so that the economic growth is not short-term like many other countries. On the social side, it is investing in people, and then on the right side, it is ensuring that we have a free media, we have an independence of the judiciary, we have constitutional protection of the rights of our people so that we don't go back to the past when we lost those rights. And in the past, we had a period for almost 30 years when what you said would land you in jail, or what you ate would have landed you in jail. So protection of rights. So these are just elements of that dream. But the vision is a united, prosperous Guyana for all of our people, including those who live in the diaspora, because we see them for our people. Yes.
Thank you. Moving over to the sector for a little bit. The Minister of Natural Resources will have recently answered some questions in relation to the rate of depletion in some of the oil wells. So one of the concerns is that when the resources are exhausted, will Guyana continue to seek loans to help to fund the country's development?
Okay, so I just mentioned a word, sustainability. So the very question that you asked me here should be put to the opposition. So you're saying, don't build the power plant now, don't build the other infrastructure now. Because a lot of this infrastructure that we are putting in is of not just a social nature, economic nature. So if you have lower prices for electricity, you can move more into manufacturing. If we build more farm-to-market roads and processing facility, and like tissue culture labs, etc., we can now expand agriculture as we're doing. So you have to plan for the day when oil is no longer available or does not generate the same sort of income that it will generate, say, about 3 years from now, because we're not at peak revenue from oil as yet. So that is precisely what we say to the opposition. You have to start working from now, almost on a post-oil and gas strategy. As president, I spoke to 3 prime ministers from a particular country to say, what are you doing about your post-oil and gas economy? And I don't think much was done to diversify the economy of that country. and they had major loss of welfare because of that. So we are determined not to find ourselves in a situation like that. That's the first point. So from day one, we are working for long-term sustainability so that you can generate other or income from other sectors to sustain the growth in prosperity. The second point is that if you raise wages and salaries with all of your money, so it's recurrent. So what happens if you don't earn in the future that much? You're stuck with this huge expense of high wages and salaries. And that is what, if you look at almost all the countries that have failed, that has gone back to in Africa, Asia, everywhere, here in Trinidad, all the Caribbean countries that have had, that has raised wages to such a level, they now are suffering from significant economic downturn because now they can't sustain the wages level. And so that is why you have to find a balance between capital investment, raising wages and salaries as we're doing because it's going up, so you have to do it, but it has to be sustainable. Investing in social welfare, education, healthcare. So, for example, if we have better educated people, we can export knowledge. The knowledge-based economy can generate a whole ton of new opportunities and jobs and higher paying jobs. So that's what we're doing also, investing in education and then saving some of the money for the bad years. So that is how we're looking at it. Investing in new sectors, social investment, economic investment, investing in wages and salaries for our people. Like I just pointed out, since we got into office, the public sector got $90 billion more per year. 90 billion, that's 450 million US dollars more per year they're earning. So some investment there and then some in saving. It's as simple as that, simple. The opposition wants one thing. They want all of it on wages and salary. They promise all of it. Of course, they're not going to do it. You know, if they get into office, you're not getting anything. They promised it in 2015. Instead, they took away a lot of the benefits, pensioners' benefits, children benefits, etc., and splurge it on other useless things, like the Patterson feasibility study. So that is how we are approaching it. So, and then on the borrowing, we, at this stage, I pointed out that our debt now, there is a nominal sum, and then there's the real sum, or it could be relative to GDP. But the nominal amount of external debt today in US dollars is lower than what we had as external debt in the 90s. So with the economy at that time of 300 odd million US dollars, we had a 2.1 billion US dollar debt. Today, our debt is less than 2.1 billion US dollars, external debt. And we have a $22 billion economy. The economy is 60-something times larger than then, and our debt in nominal dollars have remained the same. And so that tells you a story. People don't want to hear that story. Sometimes people don't even, it's an economic success that very few countries in the world has been able to mirror. And it's largely because of disciplined stewardship. Disciplined stewardship. So even, you heard last week, even the gas to energy project, we paid down nearly 400 million from the budget for that project. Whilst we're waiting on the loan, we are just moving forward because that project is critical to reducing electricity prices and also bringing stable power to our people and cheaper cooking gas to them. It's important. And those are important objectives for the government. Important objectives. So on the debt side, we are not splurging on debt like some countries would do that. But we do need to build out the infrastructure. And I think we can fund it from this balanced approach without getting into any unsustainable framework or unsustainable national strategy.
Dr. Jagdeo, on the gas monetization deal, I'm not sure if you would have seen it, but some members of the PNC, in the PNCR in general, has hinted that you and other members of the government have allegedly a personal stake in this gas monetization deal. How do you respond to this?
Well, the thing is that Glenn Lal said that too. You recall Glenn Lal up to 2 years ago, he came to my press conference. I was at his office, and they said I still own the Marriott. You remember that? And he was supposed to show me how I own the Marriott, or friends of mine own the Marriott. He said that. So it's not true. The government owns the Marriott 100%. They tried to vilify the Marriott, and it's a profitable project. Every day, when you have an opposition that doesn't have anything else to do, that's what they fill their time with sloganeering and accusations of friends and family. If we talk about friends and family, who got the scholarships on the APNU? The friends and family, the ministers and their children. If we talk about friends and family, who got the biggest salary increase? The ministers, 50% in their entire term. If we talk about friends and family, who got a program paid for external medical care for the ministers and their families? Again, the ministers. That's friends and family. If we talk about land, distribution, who got the land? Again, friends and family. Lowenfield, 216 acres of land in Millie's hideout. We had to buy land there to do now the housing program for people. Amanza Walton, 3 of our family members, Jordan neighbors. This is Linden, land in Linden. The Figueras, a whole range of, at the office of the president, you had 4 persons working who got more than 3,000 acres there. I listed their names in the past. If you talk about friends and family, that's it. So what has the PPP done? 33,000 house lots. So that's our friends and family now. 33,000 Guyanese are our friends and family now. Not the few there. The scholarship, 28,000 friends and family of the PPP who were studying through Gold, another 22,000 through that. That's our friends and family, 50,000 Guyanese. If you talk about medical care, we've canceled out the special health package for ministers and their families, and so ministers don't have that now, paid for by the state. I can go down the long list. Cathy Hughes was friends and family and herself. She used to approve a contract for herself in her own ministry and then sign checks for her own company. And she lied to the public. That's friends and family. The Minister of Housing used to give her, I think it was how her husband was getting contract in her own ministry. Friends and family. Ask nothing about these friends and family. So the contractors now, we have 2,000 new contractors. These are friends and family of the PPP too. including a lot of Afro-Guyanese contractors that APNU is running down all the time. Because my thesis is that they don't want to see Afro-Guyanese make any progress. So then they can complain that the PP is discriminating against them. So this is the friends and family business, the friends and family party and elite. How come ordinary people who supported APNU didn't get any help? Because they were not friends and family. The Amerindians weren't friends and family, so everything got taken away from them. So we put back their CSOs. Those are our friends and family. A lot of things. The sugar workers are our friends and family, so we hired back a lot of them too. We have lots of friends and family in this country. Everybody, all Guyana, is our friends and family in the PPP. So I think I lost track of your question. What was it about again?
The initial question was that the PNC
that I own this company now, would I do in the gas or?
That you and other members of the government have a personal stake in the gas monetization.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. But why don't, so Norton should say that publicly. This is a season of lawsuits. If he's so sure, then let him say that I have a stake in it. Right? So it's utter nonsense. We went out to a public tender, and I saw a big hullabaloo about it now in all of the papers. The company that was selected, it was on the basis of what they offered. I dealt this already. When you look at the people, Baker Hughes and McDormand and Solaris and ERM, these are some of the biggest multi-billion-dollar company in the world that were associated with the bid. It's not a single individual. It might be the project man who's putting it together, but it's on the basis of what you submit that you get evaluated. And this was evaluated at a technical level and went forward. So, but they're opposed to that too, the gas, the energy, they're opposed to that. They're opposed to monetizing the gas now. They don't want us to earn more from monetizing the gas. So it's friends and family again.
And finally, Dr. Jagdeo, how would you describe your relationship with the CEO of Fulcrum? And did you at any time during your interactions discuss gas monetization?
I met the gentleman once when they were making a report on the gas to energy project. It was a contentious engagement with him because we were discussing the pricing policy for the gas. That's the only time I saw him. He came as part of the task force. Never saw him again. And then I met him subsequent to the award of the contract. Never in between. So that is clear. And I shouldn't really be feeding into this kite show news thing, because they do that and then they try to establish a relationship. I could say Glenn Lal used to smuggle cocaine in pumpkins too, out. And what do you think about that? As the reporter, what do you think about that? And that's the relationship. What relationship did he have with the pumpkins or the supplier of the pumpkins? That they used to cut a hole in and put the thing in and put back the thing, and the pumpkin used to grow back. So what relationship did he have? I can come up with any story. So I have absolutely no relationship with the gentleman. I don't.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez, TBN. Since you've started your press conference as an opposition lead, it's set a precedence, and you've led the way in explaining to the people what's going on in the country. Members of the public, a lot of people have messaged me, and they're noticing you playing into an AFC narrative. The AFC has shown that the last election they're basically irrelevant, is accepted nationally that they're irrelevant. But from time to time, 3 press conferences now you have come and you are playing into AFC narrative. Are you seeing where you're falling back here and maybe being...
No, because I'm just, it's not them. The AFC is irrelevant. Nigel Hughes I believe, has consistently misled the people of Guyana. He tried to portray himself recently as a champion for the cause of a few people, falsely so. He tried to portray himself as a new leader, to resurrect the AFC. He failed miserably in doing that because we pointed out he was there when the AFC was in the cesspool of corruption and all of that. He was still a member of that party. So it is not, we have no doubt that when the elections come, that the people of the country will see through the AFC. It's an attempt to refashion itself and to distance itself from that sordid, dirty period in office and try to, so that's clear. They're not making any waves. Nigel Hughes goes underground and he hands out a couple of bags and takes a couple of pictures and posts them, and they comment on everything under the sun now. He went to Linda and Norton, said, I could have helped them get a better crowd. They had a couple of people there, and that was supposed to be one of their strongholds when they started. That's not the point. The point is that we have now some of the newspapers. The reason I'm talking about it, because I want people to see how a newspaper like the Stabroek News, which claims to be serious, will give an outsized publicity to a man who goes and discovers pit latrines for the first time in the year, and talk about pit latrine in an Amerindian community, and will not do an editorial about that the PPP initiative has led to 800 projects being done, not financed from the Treasury, but money earned through the innovation of this party in government, to do 800 projects in the first year and another 800 projects in those villages. They would not give 3 lines to that in the newspapers, but will give a whole editorial to pit latrines that Nigel Hughes discovered, and they quote him. It is this duplicity that I'm talking about. Not him. We're not worried about the AFC and the others, a political organization. It's about the duplicity of the people who say they're serious about informing the people. A newspaper's job is to inform the people of the country. So they couldn't inform the whole of Guyana about all the positives that took place at the NTC. They only found APA to make a comment. APA is hostile to the PPP, pro-PNC, tried to block the funds to the Amerindian, but they got a voice. Then Vincent Henry dominated the paper, another PNC MP who got $165 million to distribute. And then the third one was Atu Shao, who eventually signed the opt-in mechanism. He signed it actually as an executive of the NTC, but who is related to Don Hastings, who is another PNC member. 3 pro-PNC outfits, the whole newspaper covered with that. Not a single word about the PPP has not done anything. Oh, the land policy? Well, the PPP didn't really start this, but they didn't say that the PPP put $10.2 billion behind the $10.2 million US dollars from money earned from the LCDS behind this initiative. titled a lot of communities, and APNU discontinued the unit. In fact, dismantled the unit. This what I'm talking. So when the reader out there, or people who believe that you should read multiple sources to come to the truth, when they read this, then they can listen to my voice saying, what about the other side? Where are the editorials on the things that we're doing to solve transportation problem, or the adaptation measures to deal with climate change? Not a single editorial about that. Not a single editorial about the initiative that is globally recognized, the Forest Initiative. None of those things matter. But the newspaper's role is to inform the public. But it seems as though nothing that the PPP is doing is worthy of informing the public about. Nothing. And that's what I'm going after. Not the AFC. The AFC, we know this. It's the same old Trotman. He's the leader. Trotman was a waste at that time. He still has a ton of things to answer, no matter how much Kiteshore News tries to resurrect them. Kiteshore News is their tool for resurrection now, Kiteshore News, but they have another crazy one there who wants to form a political party. So it's just that, like the WPA now, every day they're in the newspaper. WPA, I can count their members on there's Pam alone, there's Ann alone. I can count their members here, and you would think this is a major political party. This is the leader and two other persons, and that's it. But when you look at the coverage they get, it's more than the entire government of Guyana. More than the entire government of Guyana. And the PPP, definitely the PPP don't get anything. Because PPP, they would go back and fabricate everything. You see, like they just attempt to fabricate a connection between me and some fulcrum, which I don't have a clue about.
Dr. Jagdeo,
that's why I'm dealing with it.
The PNC has been is the main opposition, and is by far the biggest political party, and a party has been in government for a number of years. So they have the ability to mobilize and do things. That being said, is the government looking at the AFC ability to mobilize and their connection with ExxonMobil in light of the fact of Exxon's history in different countries around the world that to some extent destabilize economies to get their way? Is the government aware? We're not making accusations, but is the government cognizant of what's going on?
So my view is that these large organizations always want their people who would be subservient to them. And I believe in their own calculations, they understand that if you have on your payroll the leader of a political party that is represented in the National Assembly and has the right to influence policies in relation to the oil and gas sector, that will serve them well. So that's why they're hanging on to Nigel Hughes. But it's not what Exxon is doing. It's more about Nigel Hughes himself and his commitment. So behind all of the loftiness and everything else, he is just greedy. He wants to keep the job there, but if he becomes president, then he will give up the Exxon job. He can't do it before that. He doesn't want to make the commitment to distance himself. And he has already made it clear. As I said the last time, any leader who says, if the national interest conflicts with that of my client, and my client is an external company, non-Guyanese, then the non-Guyanese company's interests will prevail over all of Guyana and all of our interests collectively. How could you take such a person seriously? You can't even take him seriously. And he is not the last of us. Next year when we get on the campaign trail, we'll deal with that more.
Dr. Jagdeo, I've asked this question before, and it comes again in light of what I see going on. Kaieteur News reporters come continuously on a weekly basis and ask stupid questions. While the government of Guyana affords Kaieteur News to be the largest recipient of state ads, bear in mind, the news industry has gone to social media.
Yeah.
Why persons, and I gotta speak for myself, persons like Gordon Mosley and others who are on social media are not getting more from government? Government, do you have a share in Kaieteur News?
Do I have a share in Kaieteur News?
Sending money to Kaieteur News. Do you have a share in Kaieteur News?
Well, Glenn Lal was close to me one time in the past. He used to hang around and stuff, so maybe I'm friends and family. So I may have an interest in keeping Kaieteur News going and making money there too. His friends and family paper. So
looking at making a level playing field.
No, but you're absolutely right about one thing. That social media now reaches many more people, a lot of than the newspapers and the others. And it should be time maybe to rethink the advertising budget of the government. Not in a way to stop giving ads to the newspapers, but just let them be more reflective of the reach. One time we tried that and it didn't go so well. But maybe it's time to have a look at it again. Next thing they're gonna complain to the press association that we are trying to starve them of ads. So it's something that should be considered. I actually think it's a good idea. Or giving more to the social media. But some of the newspapers too, like I think Stabrook and others, they also have a social media presence, an online presence. So even if people don't read them in the form, they reach people. So it should be studied. They do reach people.
Finally, Dr. Jagdeo, recently the Teachers Union and the Ministry of Education have come to an understanding. Have you perused the agreement and you're satisfied? Because I know it's a multi-year agreement, but knowing the political instability or control that is trying to be placed over the union, cause the union to act in a certain way sometimes. That was seen with the attack on the teachers, the union head. After a good agreement was come to, everybody was satisfied, but the PNC. Are you satisfied with the agreement, and can we safely say we'll not be seeing anything like this in the near future, or would be used against the government come next year before elections?
The thing is that the PNC, as I said before, they don't have any plan to talk about. Nothing. No plan for the country. The others do. They don't. So there are a couple of things that they will campaign on that we already know. Racism every day. So the East Coast Road, Norton said, we're narrowing the road in Indian villages. So you do 2 lanes there and then 4 lanes back again. That's his wonderful thing about our PPP racism, right? And by the way, you saw when they argued that the bridge was placed there to bypass New Amsterdam. Now they're saying we went through Maka now. So it's a different argument. Now we went through Maka and we took away the squatters. We didn't need the land there. Why did we have to go through Maka with the highway? By going through the Maka area with the highway, the Maka has now become frontlands close to the highway. The property value has gone up, but you get criticized for this. And then when we moved it out of New Amsterdam, because you couldn't go through the town with a bridge, we discriminated there. And here we discriminated because we actually went through the contradictions. But they will come with racism. They're going to come with claims that we are attempting to steal the election, something about the voters list. And they will try to work on the teachers, well, not the teachers union, like people like Coretta McDonald and the others to create instability. The playbook is evident. The playbook is evident already. So we know what they will come with. They have nothing else to speak of.
Does the government have any update on the cases as it relates to the Mingo and Myers and Lowenfield matters? In the news, there's some bit of controversy around how it's being dealt with, resistance from the judiciary, how it's been processed. Any updates, sir?
The last thing I heard was that the magistrate had gotten some medical leave for a month. That was the last thing I heard.
Jagdeo, Final Manager in the Guyana Times. Can you provide an update on the gas to energy arbitration process? And also the new Demerara River Bridge, it's halfway completed. March, I believe, is the deadline next year. Mm-hmm. Has government started the process on the toll pricing?
Oh, the president has already spoken about this. He has indicated publicly that tolls will be looked at, so I think he will address this matter shortly, very, very soon actually. And so I don't want to speak on tolls now, but the president will address this matter very, very soon because it was discussed. So anyhow, don't say more about that. That will come from the president. So the thing, he has already made it clear that the aim is to lower, to remove more burden from people. Yeah. Huh?
The gas to energy arbitration.
The gas to energy arbitration, the last report I had that the arbiters had or either had come for a site visit or will come for a site visit. So they have to do a site visit.
Have any idea when?
I think they may have already come on the site visit. So I guess they have to see what has happened on the ground. That was the last report I got last week.
Good afternoon, Vice President Kimal King. For Oil Now, I'd first like to respond. You made a comment today.
Oh, that's why they sent you, Exxon sent you here?
No, I heard you
okay.
while I was on the way in. You made a comment about
the 7.6?
About the 7.6. And you said why Oil Now doesn't write stories about Exxon's earnings. I'm glad you asked because I've written stories about Exxon's earnings.
So how much do they receive per day?
Well,
how much? That's only how I just want to know for information's sake. How much do they report?
Every year it's going to be different.
Yes, so, but no, since using the same basis that you calculated is 7.6, how much will they get per day?
Well, I haven't done that calculation.
Oh, well, that's what I was saying. In the story, had it been balanced, it would say Exxon gets this and the government gets this per day. So that is precisely what I was saying. But you haven't done the calculations there. But you did the calculation on the government side. So to be fair, the story should say the government of Guyana gets daily basis this sum of money and Exxon gets X amount.
Well, there's a reason for that, and that's because the Bank of Guyana posts monthly and quarterly reports about deposits into the Natural Resource Fund. So you'll find Exxon putting out its annual reports annually. But
So you don't, Exxon is not transparent. The government is transparent. So Exxon is not transparent about it. The government is transparent. That's a good
well, it's not my place
start
to defend or support that.
Okay, but no, you
there
started
have
this
been
about the
reports
story, yeah.
on Exxon's earnings last year and on the consortium's earnings in Guyana.
Yes,
And-
but how much per day, like last year?
Well, I haven't done that calculation.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all I'm asking, because you recall, and the reason I'm saying this is that you recall Nigel Hughes, a man who is not known for doing a lot of mathematics, not very good at mathematics. Remember the 33 is not majority of 65. So he posted a detailed calculation how much we're receiving per second, not just per day. He said per hour, per minute, per second, and couldn't calculate that his 1.5% offer was working out to 3,500 Guyana dollars per year that he first offered to put in law, and then he changed it to 10.5%, and that was 35,000 Guyana dollars per year. So he has changed this now. He didn't calculate that. So all of this, the $7.6 million per day, US dollars per day, just works out, well, that was for this year. But last year, if you did that, would work out to 29 thousand Guyana dollars per month for every Guyanese. And that's the point I was making. So it looks like a lot if you say 7.6 million US dollars. We earn more than 7.6 million US dollars per day from non-oil sources. But it makes it look like, oh, all of this is just oil money.
No problem, Vice President.
Okay.
For the record, ExxonMobil profited $2.9 billion in Ghana last year, and the consortium profit was $6.3 billion. So anybody could take that and divide it between.
But I just
365
want
get
you
the
to
amount.
do it the same way you did it to Guyana.
Okay.
Okay.
My first question, it's been a few weeks. I just wanted to know if there has been a decision on CGX Energy's notice of potential commercial interest in its latest quarantine block discovery.
The minister made it clear that right now they do not have a license. He said that to you. They do not have. So we're under no pressure because that's the situation as of now. It's not like the renewal of a license is dependent on a decision. They do not have a license at this stage. So I think he made that clear at the meeting. And so we're under no pressure to make a decision now. At the cabinet, I guess, I've now gone to the cabinet, so for a while now. So I guess that will go there eventually. And the cabinet started the discussions. They were supposed to provide more information to the cabinet. I guess when that goes there, they'll make a decision and then you'll be notified. But right now, they do not have.
Now to say that the ball is in their court to come to the government and say, hey, we found a partner or we found money, so...
Well, that question was asked of them and they did not provide satisfactory answers. The Minister of Natural Resources met with them, asked them a number of questions, and I think he reported that to the cabinet.
Okay, thank you. There has been an announcement by Hilton that they have signed Hilton, the hotel brand.
Hotel.
They've signed a deal they've had 2 hotel signings to come to Guyana. And I was wondering if this involved any deals with the government for provision of land or anything like that.
I don't know which are the 2, but often we do provide the land. You remember, like where was it? A couple of days ago, I was talking about our policies. And many people think that the construction of the hotels came about by chance.
Yeah.
And so I explained that weeks after the government took office, we put out an expression of interest for all of those who wanted to do hotels. Because we have huge, the room shortages in the country. We got over 20 expressions of interest. At a meeting at State House that the President chaired, I was there, Minister Onish Waldron, a number of other people. We met with almost all of the companies, and we said we will provide land. We'll provide the land in some cases. Not everyone needed the land. And we'll change the incentive regime. And we did those two things. As a result of which, we got 7 international hotels under construction now, with another maybe 3 will come on stream. So it's entirely consistent with government policy. If you want to build a hotel now, anyone, it's an international hotel, the government will give you the incentive regime. It's not preferential, it's not for one person, it's across the board. Every hotel will get the same regime, and we will work with you to find the land to build it.
Okay, thank you. By the way, do you see the popping up of many hotels here potentially having an impact on the cost of living to the detriment of, locals?
In what way?
Potentially having the effect of the tourist influx driving up the cost of certain things.
So the way I see it is that if you have greater supply, you have greater supply. So a lot of our tourists, are Guyanese who come back home. So far, the bulk of the people who come into our country so far are Guyanese who return home. If you have to pay, sometimes there is no room at the Marriott, they have to pay $500-600 per night because you don't have any space, so the hotels can charge you any rate. It would have a positive impact on a number of our people coming back home. So they would be able to get properly priced hotel rooms, and it makes you more competitive. That's the first thing. Secondly, our tourism product will be vastly enhanced for the hinterland too, because if tourists can find a hotel at a cheaper rate, then it would be a big boost to the tourism industry. If we have more tourists here, these 7 hotels alone would need about 3,000 staff. So about 3,000 Guyanese can find jobs in these hotels that are built. So it would have a positive effect on employment creation. If you have more tourists here too, they would consume more local stuff. So we are pushing people to provide a local meal. At Marriott now you have in the buffet section, I think you have local food too. And even Hard Rock, I see, has introduced local food, unlike many Hard Rocks around the world. So it means more demand for our farmers and everything else to supply fresh fruit, vegetables, a whole range of supply. So I can only see it in a positive sense. I can see it in more positive sense. And we'd be able to host more international events like cricket. We're building a couple of stadiums. We can run a whole tournament in the future if we have two stadiums. The one in Berbice, this one here, and the government of Qatar has promised to transfer one for free to us for Region 3. And with, say, Linden being able to play cricket now, you can play international cricket maybe in Anna Regina once we complete the stands and everything else. So we'll be able to run a whole tournament here with 7, 8 international hotels all of these stadia, and not just cricket, but football tournament to a major one, host major matches. So I see these things are entirely in the positive sense.
Okay, thank you. For Reuters, could you say if the government is at this time still offering the government-to-government partnerships option for giving out oil blocks? You had mentioned in the past that one of the considerations for this option is that you don't want to make it seem as though there is unfairness, like giving equal competition. So
the option is still available. We have not pursued it in specific term with anyone.
Okay. So China National Petroleum Corporation, a Chinese state-owned oil company, separate from CNOOC, which is already here, is looking to build on its overseas deal-making, and it plans to scout deepwater acreage in South America. So I was just wondering if the government is in any talks with that company.
No, the government is not in any talk with any company that is that company. Let me just say that company. To transfer any block to them directly. That's what it is, to transfer any block directly. Anyone else? No, thank you very much.